Now you got it. The productivity of the overall economy needs to improve.
So
there's a question of whether we need really human beings to do that.
Like I can buy the next economy for that.
Right. But look, can I just go ahead? I just want to ask. So look, this is a very long-term view, and things are shifting in one way or another. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in the business of managing money, right? So, Cullen, I'm curious. You know, you've talked about how your defense against the dark arts. You understand it. It helps you on the behavioral side, but ultimately, you have to put something together that makes sense. How do you think about portfolio construction in this world?
I mean, I'm not doing the sexy stuff that you guys do. You guys
could I maybe sharpen the pencil on this question? Because I wrote this down earlier when you said, here's the range of outcomes for the next 12 months. And they are, 3% deflation to 15% inflation. And so how do you manifest some sort of portfolio hedge, or how do you build the portfolio given those outcomes?
Yeah. I mean, so I work, primarily with individuals. So, to me, so much of this stuff is super personalized. Starting with the inflation question, it's like, well, do you own a home or do you not own a home? Because that's a huge, huge difference in how well hedged against inflation you are right off the bat. And so this question is different for everybody. Me personally, my foundational starting point for any asset allocation is the global market portfolio. So looking at, I'm not a big adherent of the efficient market hypothesis, but if you wanted to put together something that just was really broadly diversified and, pretty hands-off, long-term oriented and covered all your bases, well, that's the portfolio you would buy. And I think that as a starting point, you can then start to customize and tweak and twist it to fit somebody's personal needs. But for me, that's kind of always the starting point, is that as a framework from a macro perspective, you don't need to get brain damage trying to pick and choose where is the perfect optimal place to be in the market. I'm a big advocate of all weather portfolios where you just kind of, you sling your money around in a lot of different baskets and you're pretty well hedged in some way all the time. So I know that's kind of a lazy, it's not a...
It's not
our language, baby.
It's very thoughtful. The challenge then becomes the tracking error that you talked about at the very beginning of the investor needs to follow a portfolio that they can follow, not necessarily the most efficient portfolio. And I guess that's what you're saying, is you've got to take those concepts and then make them bespoke for the individual.
Yeah, well, that's the hardest part about asset allocation, is that it's really the essential guiding principle of diversification, is that you're always going to hate something in your portfolio. You should, like right now, I see a lot of people, they look at the bond market and they're like, the bond market is awful, or holding cash. People are like, how can you hold any cash in a market where the inflation rate is this high? And it's like, well, you say that now, but who knows, if Vladimir Putin decides to drop a nuclear bomb on Paris in, 5 years, some weird shit's going to happen. And you're going to probably feel really good about, some of these more defensive, kind of safe haven type assets that looked really awful. And that's the other big, big lesson from the pandemic to me, is that nobody has any fucking idea what is going to come down the pike that trips you up. That's the thing that, I spend so much of my time thinking about macro econ and what are the big risks out there. And you never know about it until it actually lops you upside the head. And it always tricks the vast majority of people. So, I know it's not a super sexy approach or anything. And I could sit here and say oh, I think value is coming back and I would prefer to hold gold. And there are things that I would probably tilt towards that, I have a preference towards personally versus other things based on my opinion. But in a general sense, I think we all kind of know at this point that nobody really knows what the fuck any of this stuff is going to do in the short term.